Yeah. Good morning, everyone. So there's some missing lab that we couldn't complete because of the situation of the country. So for that, I have created lab upload new submission, which is 7 days now. So which is from lab 10 that we missed because we couldn't complete it, and the arrays lab that we has to do it on the next week. So so without we doing it, let's start to complete the lab 10 part. And we are going to complete lab 11 part also, step by step, so you can follow the series with the recording. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close all the tabs and close the project. So I'm going to open the project that is completed after the nested classes. So you can just select UI nested done, download that zip file, and you can copy this to the desktop. So once you copied it, you can open the folder with open project and select the desktop folder, and you can open the project that we just used it. So now I'm going to use the Apache NetBeans, the latest IDE, and so far we have completed the rider controller, the controller class, and this bicycle UI and the rider UI that we see the current speed and the gear. Now, first task of today's activity is we need to open this lab 10, and let's try to follow with it. So we are going to use inheritance in Java. So parent class and child class, we are going to create it. So we first of all, to create a bank account class which has these following details. So I'm going to do, where should we create it? It should be under the model class, because we are going to create first model, then the views, then the controller, then the services and the database layer. That's how we are going to implement it. So let's start with the model. So I'm going to say bank account. So when you create this class, it will be generating some empty comments. So we don't need this. So I'm going to delete that comments like this. So once you do that, you need to have these attributes: owner name, account number, and the balance. I'm going to use this here. So these are string, and account number is actually integer, and the balance is actually, let's say, float. So these are variables. So I'm going to finish it with the semicolons. So now once you generate it, here it says we need to write the bank account class with two constructors. So one constructor should be the assign taken as parameters to the owner name, account number, and balance, and there should be another default constructor that assign null values for the zip. So let's see what is the meaning of this. So first of all, usually you know how to generate a constructor and write it. So it should be the same name as your class name, or you can just right click and insert code and generate a constructor like this. So we can see it should be the same name as your class name and same access modifier as your class, and you are using the bank account as the constructor name. And typically this is our constructor we overloaded. We just write some parameters into that and take that values and assign it into the variable. But here it says your exercise, you're going to say, it says and make other constructor default one. The default constructor doesn't have any parameters. This will assign null for all the strings and 0 for numbers. So that means what we are going to do is I can just copy and paste the entire constructor. So if you want to do method overloading, that means you are changing the number of parameters, right? You have parameters like this. Now we don't have any parameters. So we are going to assign nulls and zeros for the default value. So this is our default constructor. So by default, what will it do is it just assign default value 0 and nulls for that. But this is our overloaded constructor, because we just add some parameters. We add number of parameters, that is called method overload. So this is method overloading. So we can say overloaded constructor. So this is how you understand the basic of that overloading of methods. Then you have to say write a method to print that and returns the string in following format: owner name, account number, and the balance. So print account. So let's write it's like a two-string method. So public string print account, and it doesn't take any parameters. So you can format it. This should return what? Owner name, account number, and balance. So you can say this keyword is not compulsory, but as a practice you can use it. And you have to put n within bracket. Balance should be there. Balance is this dot balance. Plus you can close the curly bracket. So what we have done is, so we have a method that will be returning owner name, account number, and within bracket balance. So this should be the balance that will be printing to the screen. So that I'm going to return to the outside. So then write a class definition. So that is, after that you have write a setters for account numbers and balance, and get a account number and the balance. So let's understand what is this getter and a setter. So usually we can generate it, that is what we learn, but let's write it. So it says write a method to set owner name. So I'm going to set the owner name because I'm going to make this private. So no one can access it outside of the package and the outside of the class also if you directly set it to private. So it's a very restricted privilege that we are going to do. So in that case, if I want to change the owner name, we have to set using a method. So I'm going to say public. So this template is same. So if you want to write a setter, it's always void. And the variable I'm going to set is the owner name. I'm going to say set owner name. This is our setter. And if I want to set the owner name, I'm going to have a name from the user. So then I'm going to say this dot owner name is equal to the owner name that I set from the parameters. See? Now this is how you write a setter. So usually in NetBeans you don't have to write it one by one. You can just generate it automatically. For example, account numbers, I can do that same theory. Right click and insert code. You can say setter. You can just set account number and the balance and take according to the parameters. Now see that setter has been generated, set account number. So you don't have to write it like we wrote this method earlier. Now this one we don't have to write it because it's automatically generated. So I'll use the capital letters for minimal name, so owner name. So but in the exam, make sure the idea is get to you how to get the owner name, account number, the balance. So this is I have set it. So this is the owner name, right? I forgot about that. That's why it's not showing like that. So next, after you generate the setters, you have to write getters to get owner name and the balance. So getter is actually to get the read the data from the outside because we make it private, so we can't directly access it. That is why we use setter method to set the values. So if you want to read the values, I'm going to say public. So make sure it is the return type of the variable that we created. So string. I'm going to say get owner name. Get owner. So this is our getter. So getter doesn't have any parameters. Just read it to the outside. So if they want to read the variables, you can't directly say from the object.owner name. We have to use this get method to read the values. So just return the this dot owner name. So we don't need to generate it. We can automatically use it as well. So here owner name and the balance should be read to the outside. I can insert the code to get a getter for the balance. This is the balance, right? Yes, balance. See, we can write getters and setters, or we can just generate getters and setters, up to you. So if you have written it by yourself, that is easy for you because you will remember how to write it. Otherwise, if you're a group project, you can just generate it for the easy, like you can save the time to generate the methods for you, because otherwise if you try to write it one by one, it takes some time. We have written the bank account class. So now what we need to do is, so we need to write another class definition for savings account. This will have an interest rate and a flag and total savings account counter, and this should be inherited from the bank account. So now we are going to create a child class for this. Another model class, new Java class. So for this, I'm going to say savings account and click finish. So we have to remove the unnecessary comment as well. Right, so this is our package name and this is our model names. So we have to leave it as it is, but the savings account should be inherited from the balance account. So you have to use a keyword called extends and type the bank account class. Now this is actually all the details from the bank account, including the owner name, gateway methods, and everything now belong to the savings account. Now we want to protect this class from creating a direct object. So if you want to do that, we can just create a class called abstract. So if you make this class abstract, the advantage is the users cannot directly create objects from this class. So we have to use the savings account if you want to create objects. So I just make it abstract. So now I have a savings account. For that, you need to have a flag, interest rate, and a bool. Yeah. So I'm going to say interest rate, that is a float, and boolean flag, and that should be, and there should be a counter called total savings account. So integer, and this should be a static because it should keep all the variables counted. So I'm going to say static integer total savings. So now, so this should be inherited from the bank account, and it says write a default constructor and one other constructor with parameters set or name balance according to the parameters. So let's write a constructor. So insert code, I'm going to generate a constructor. Now here, this is the advantage of the NetBeans IDE, because if you use the NetBeans IDE 13, they will allow you to create a super class constructor. For example, I'm going to initialize the interest rate and the flag, but just generate it. This will be only setting the values from the child class. But there should be another way, like we have to write a constructor which should be generate the values of the super class as well, like owner name, account number, balance. These should be also set at from this constructor. So we'll write two constructor. One is just setting zeros, other one is just setting values from the super class. So what I want to do is, first of all, if you just assign the child class variable, that is fine, but make sure you need to assign the super class details first, then the child class, then only that will be allowed to use. So I'm going to say super. So that is what we discussed in the lecture. I'm going to assign what are the variables that set it in super class: owner name, account number, and the balance. So I'm going to say this variable I have set it in super class, account number that I have set it in the super class, and the balance. So remember, this super keyword should be the beginning statement in a immediate class constructor. So otherwise, if you sub the order, you can see an error message showing that it is not allowed to set it in the middle. So it should be the first immediate state. So now we need to generate another constructor like in your main bank account, which assign null. So here we don't write any parameters because this is overloaded one, and here we assign nulls and zeros, and account number 0, balance is 0.0f, and the interest rate also 0.0f, and flag is false, initial values. So now we have two constructors. If you don't have values, we can just create a savings account without parameters, but if you have values, you have use the top of the constructor. So now it says write a method to calculate and return the balance after applying the interest rate. Now remember, this total savings accounts, when you create a savings account, they should be incremented. That is what we have done in a lab. So when you create a new savings account, this constructor will be called, that will be incremented. And also here also the savings accounts will be called, this should increment the value. So then after you write that, we have to say that write a method to calculate and return the balance after applying the interest rate. So I'm going to say public. Now since we are going to make it private, directly it's not accessible. That is the standard. If you want to encapsulate it, we don't want to allow the direct variable access like this, so that is too bad. So I'm going to make it private. So now the next step is I'm going to return a float method. So let's say calculate interest. So we want to calculate the interest after applying the interest rate. So I'm going to say what is the interest is. We can just return. Now balance is already available in my super class. This is the balance. So I'm going to say super is actually the keyword to access the superclass variable. I'm going to get the superclass balance. You can multiply that balance by the interest rate I got, and that should be added to the total. So that is the balance. So this is how you calculate the interest rate. So total balance multiplied by the interest rate plus the total. So that is how it's calculated. For example, so yeah, a semicolon is missing. That is why I get an error like this. So imagine if your balance is 500, 500 multiplied by if the interest rate is 0.5. So this is actually 550, 250 is the interest rate, but that is not enough because total after you apply the interest rate will be 750. So that is how you generate the interest rate. After applying the interest, what will be the total they are asking. See, so that will be written after applying the interest rate. So now it says the next method is override the parent methods with print accounts that return the string in following format: owner name, account number, that is the balance, and the interest flag. So now, so we're going to override this method. So this print account method, I'm going to just copy and paste. That is actually my super class method. So now I'm going to do method override. That I'm going to say override. So you have to say at override. That's the annotation you have to use. So now here it says owner name, account number, balance. This is printed using our parent class. We have printed like this. Now I don't need this and keyword, right? Just within bracket. Now this is actually from the parent class, so which print in the detail of the parent account number, balance. But apart from that, we need to print the interest and the flag. So in that case, I don't need to print this again because it's there from the super class. I can just say you can write a return statement to return it. So superclass dot, I can call the superclass print account method because that will be getting the values, owner name, account number, and the balance. So then we can just write it to other parties. What are those? This dot interest rate plus this dot flag. Now here you have to put the plus sign and that semicolon. So now then you have write a setters for interest rate and the flag, and the getters for interest rate and flag, and total savings account. That should be, since I make it private, we have to write a method to generate the total savings account automatically. So what we can do is we can insert the code and generate getters and setters for all the three methods. Okay. So you can now see this has been private, so they can't directly access it, but we can make it public, so then the child class can directly get these variables, like they can publicly set it to the outside. Now the proper data type for the parent class is not private because the child cannot directly access it. So this is also fine. But what I can recommend is the best data type for the child class is, you can say from the parent is protected, because then this variable can be only read in the child class rather than getting the superclass.print account method. Now here also, if you want to get the balance, we have to call the balance method, but here we can now access the balance because they have set to the protected. Now look at the difference. Now I make it protected 3 times. Now rather than calling the superclass.balance, now the balance is directly available to use for the child class, only for the child class. So all the inherited class can be used these variables. So protected can be used for accessing that variable in the child class. Now if you make it private, this cannot be used anywhere outside of this class. So that is the highest privilege, but this one is kind of flexible because we can use it in the child class to access it. Now if you see the recording, we use the get method to get the balance because the main method is actually private. So if it is private means they can't access the balance directly. They have to call the get balance method. But if you make it protect the variable child class, they can directly access it using the super.balance. So that is the advantage. Okay, we don't need to get a setter for the total savings account, only for the getters for the total savings account. So now we have generated the class and the savings account, so that will be fine. Then finally it says you can select any kind of a UI to call the methods in step number 1 and 2. Let's write a UI for that. Now we have generated the model class, and that is fine. So I'm going to now shift my attention to the views in my program. So right click on the views, and I'm going to create a new Java JFrame form. So make sure not to select the panel because it doesn't have a main method. Select the frame form. I'm going to say now here this one is savings account UI. So now let's see how we can design our UI based on this template. Now first of all, you need to design the model. So that is how you write classes, right? Now in your group project also, don't start with the UI. First create what are the values that you should create for this savings account. If it is a watch, what are the things that you need to store. In my case, we have to have owner name, account number, balance, interest rate, and the flag. So let's create that here. So I'm going to design this in a nice fashion. So add a panel just to set a color. It's typically up to you where you like it, and design it the way you want. So I'm going to, so now this PC has been a bit slow. I don't know why is that. Yeah, so you can change the background color to the way you like it. So I'm going to pick a light color. So then now look at it. So I'm going to design the template from the model class. Owner name. I need to have owner name. Then what we have? Account number, balance. See, that is how you design it. You look at the template of our model class, then we design the UI. Because if you do design the other way, that is a very bad practice. From the UI, you are designing the data, that is not the good approach. And the interest rate is also there, that is for the child class. And there should be a flag for the boolean. Now these are just text boxes, right? Owner name is actually bigger text area, and just delete it. So I can copy this several times. Account number, balance, but the interest rate is not that big because it's a small interest rate we get for a savings account, so we should get like this. But the flag is actually not a it should be a boolean variable, true or false, so that means checkbox. Now remove this variable. So the flag is, you can just set it like this. So now we can click a button to add savings account. And print the details. And get total savings account, that is what we have created, right? So this is what we have to have. So we have three buttons: print account details, get total savings account, and our name and flags. So let's start creating variables. You can say txt owner name, then one is text account txt account number. So third one is txt balance. Fourth one is txt interest rate, and this one is txt, this is not a text, this is a checkbox chk flag. So now if I want to add a savings account, like let's follow the template that we used to use in the controller. Now here, if I want to create it, you need to create an object from that and create a method for adding and create the object and return it to the outside. Same template, I'm going to follow it because that is making a design very good compared to just clicking on the button and write the code as it is. Now I'm going to say add savings account. Let's look at the code and you can see now you can write or read it. See here you need to have a rider and creating object and return it. Now this time this is a savings account. I'm going to create under the controller. I'm going to create a Java class. So we can say savings account controller. So I don't need these unnecessary comments. We just delete it. Now first of all, if I want to have a savings account, you need to have a savings account imported. So I can say models dot savings account. I'm going to import. So if you don't import it, so that will be not a savings account. So we need to use that like the rider class. So now here we created a rider. Now here we are going to say savings account, say rider object. We can say savings object. We follow the same standard like we discussed in the rider class. Now here rider, now it's the savings. Now here also you can add a rider instead of a rider. Now we can see earlier we write a rider class for rider objects. Now this time this is a savings account and you can say add savings account. Now if I want to add a savings account, we need to have these parameters taken from the user, then only we can set it. Earlier these are the right information. Now we can just set the details for the savings account. Now we can set the savings account to the outside like this. Now you need to have owner name, in the account number, balance, interest rate, then the blank. So that is how you create a savings account and return it to the user. So we can make these variable private, so no one can directly access it. So that should be the best way you can do it. But I will leave it as it is because we can use it for another purpose. So now we have created an object once you create a button. So now we just need only call it in the source code. Now look at the rider UI we have designed. Here we have created a rider controller and use it. Same goes here. I'm going to use my savings account UI. I can see it class called savings. Now first of all you had import it. I'm going to say import. So you need to import two packages now. One is for the model dot savings account, because bank account we are not using it because we make it abstract. So abstract means we can't directly create objects. So then controllers dot savings control. So now we have two controllers and a savings account. Now we can just create a savings account and say savings controller. So now we can assign it after the initializing of the objects equal new savings controller. So we can set that. So we have created a controller. So you can see the rider UI as well. You can side by side compare it. So that is what we have discussed. So then we can have a small object to store the values for separate usage. I can say savings account, that is for our storing our object that we store from the savings account, because here that will return an object and this controller will return an object which is from the savings account. We have to keep that in an object. I can say savings object, so that we are going to store it in our object. So once you do that, when I double click on this add savings account, it's a matter of just clicking on the button and we just savings account control is now available. Dot. Now we have the controller dot add savings account, they will return the object. Now before that, we need to have those parameters like the owner name, account number, balance, interest rate, and the blank. So let's get them. So owner name is equal to txt, can say the owner name dot get text. So string, so that is an integer account number equal txt account number dot get text. So now this we can't set it to account number, we have to integer dot pass it. So now we don't need this owner name, right? So we can just directly call it account number dot get text. So owner name, account number is done. So then the balance, it's the float equal float dot pass float txt balance dot get text. And finally that will be the other two variables. So that will be interest rate, same theory. I'm going to say interest rate, so that will be txt interest rate. The last one is actually a boolean variable. So boolean flag is equal to ch key, that is checkbox dot flag dot get is here so we are going to select whether the checkbox is selected or not. So then we have these variables. Now we have the savings account controller, which will be able to call and get the object for us. We can say savings account controller dot add savings account. Now when I call this method, you know that everything is now nice and sweet set out account number, balance, interest, and flag. Now I'll teach you in the final lab when you do the database connection why we create this object, because we just need to pass this object to the uh, savings account database. So then this object will be storing all the values of that uh, person. So we don't have to separately insert queries. We can have an object just set to the outside, then we can assign it. So you will understand it when you do the last week lectures and the labs where we connect the DB layer and the service layer. So currently we are just step by step we are approaching. Now this will be storing as a savings object to us. I can assign it back to me. Now we can just show a successful message, right? Now you can use one of the message from early UI. So you can go to the source code and double click and copy this message and customize it where you like it. So here we can say, so we can just okay then added savings account. Now if you want to run this UI only, then right click and run file. So once you've done that, so we can put the owner name, account number, and the balance, and interest rate 0.1, and click the flag, click add savings account. So it's successfully adding, but only one can be added because it's not an array. This is not an array list, just an one single object. So now we need to code the other two, which is print account details and the get total savings account. So these two methods are the one that we need to call in order to get that details. So add savings account, print account details, and get total savings account. So these things are the ones we need to get that. So let's call that. Now after that, the other two buttons are very easy because print account details, we double click on it. You can just print a message and we can show some information. So rather than printing added message, we can just call the object we have created, which is savings account start. You can say print account details. That will be printing the account details into the screen. Now you can run this file and demonstrate it. Now currently, if you run it and click the button, nothing will happen. You get exception here, right? Because we don't have any accounts. But after you add some details and the balance and 0.1 and click the flag and add savings account, the savings account has been added. So you can see the details and whether the flag has been set, and that information can be displayed. So we forget to add a new button because that is to calculate the interest details. I can have another button for that. You can say get interest. So because we forget what will happen if I add an interest rate. So now if I want to call the get interest method, that is also simple. We can just call the methods that we have, right? This one will be this get interest rate method. So the last button also get total savings account. So how many accounts that we have already created, we can just print the count here. Get total savings account. Sorry, we forgot the getter, right? In savings account, let's see. Yeah, no, this is the method we need to call. It's a static method, so we don't need to call the object. We can say savings account because it's a static method dot get savings account. So now you can run it and see how it's demonstrated. We can now run it and see whether it's working. Now add a account number, balance, interest rate, and a flag. You can say it's added. You can see the information and how many totals are there. Only one account has been created because we have already one object. So if I click the get interest rate, so you will see what is the interest that we calculated from the balance. So that is how we can see the inheritance in our class. So this is the end of the lab number 10 that we missed before the new year. Like I asked you to complete that, so this is the answer for that. So then this part, I'm going to stop this recording. I will be uploading the completed part now. So then we will do the lab 11 that we missed last week, which was supposed to be on. Let's open that. So the lab about arrays. Let's open it. So this is about to use array list in Java, and we are going to create an array list to hold the record class and the array list for the riders. So I'm going to use it for our this add writer and search button calculate BMI. So we use that as an array, and let's see how to do this in the next recording. So I will stop this recording and I will be uploading the completed project as a zip file. So then we are continuing the next recording in the second session. Thank you very much.